when it's time for the marathon, I will have relaxed so much and I'll have spent so much time not training that I'm going to go out and run it that day because I'm not going to be prepared. I'm going to get my butt kicked. And that's what people are doing.
Now, what would you say, Garrett, because we get this all the time, can you really have your own bank? Can your family really have this bank?
The system.
Yeah. What is this all about? How do you debunk that?
Look, I mean, banks were invented. It wasn't like they always existed. You know, they were invented. And I just think that one statement I've thought about or sentiment a lot lately is one person can make a massive and meaningful difference. And so if you're willing to take those steps to build it, if you start really late, maybe that bank only finances a very small portion of everything for you. If you start early, maybe it eventually finances everything for you. So I think that we have to be reminded of progress over perfection, and we have to think beyond ourselves into future generations. Because could we set up a bank for future generations? 100%, easily. But it takes time, right? And so I think one of the things that I've really dove into is because there is a lot of people like, well, there is no extra money. There is no discretionary income. There's nothing to save. I just went and became expert in finding out where we can find money. A lot of people overpay taxes, and especially with the new CARES Act, there's all these new IRS notices that came out. A lot of people get money back, right? A lot of people overpay their interest because they don't know how to get the best credit score, negotiate the best interest rates, or structure their loans appropriately. A lot of people have non-performing fees with their investments, whether it's retirement plans that have a bunch of administration fees, or whether it's funds that underperform that have a lot of expense ratios, right? And then there's a lot of people that have, duplicate coverages or improper structure with their insurances. So whether it's their car, home, liability, disability, medical, any of those types of policies, business owner policies, there's a way to design those to save money.
Right.
And so this is all ways that you can start funding your bank rather than making the insurance companies rich or making the investment firms rich or making, the local banks rich. Like it takes a little being strategic. And it's so funny. I just heard like George Bush strategery in my head and almost said it. Like, I watched too many comedies lately. I don't know. But the reality is, yes, it's completely possible. Now, there's some differences, and these are good differences. One thing that a lot of people should know about is fractionalized banking. Fractionalized banking means when I go get a loan from a bank, I get that money, and I then deposit that money back into the banking system. So I borrowed money from you guys, but I deposit it back into the system, and then they lend it out again. Yep. So dollars are lent out more than one time. It's part of this, fractionalized reserve central banking system. And to me, it's a big reason why we have inflation. Well, why not have your own bank so that when times are tough, like they are right now, when times are really tough, it's pretty awesome when you have your own bank because there's a lot of distressed people and opportunities that arise, but only for those that have the ability to get their hands on cash. And guess what? Banks love to lend you money unless you need it. Then they don't want to give it to you. So why not have your own criteria on underwriting, your own criteria on how you access capital? As a matter of fact, my controller before this meeting was like, hey, I'm going to pay a couple of loans back on your cash value, right? I'm like, great, let's do that. Now's a good time to do that. So anyway, that's my sentiment. It might not be what people think of as a bank. Like, you don't need to build a building, so you save that money. You don't need to pay a bunch of employees, so you save on that money. And, you'll earn interest rather than pay it. And when you do pay interest, you can pay the normal rates, but get preferred methodologies because of collateral. So.
Amen.
Absolutely. And you know what? The most simple thing I think people can do is read their contracts. I think a lot of people get in trouble because they don't read the fine print. They don't read the contract that they're given, and they end up in a position that they don't necessarily want to be in. And the nice thing about what you said, when becoming your own source of financing, you can be like your own bailout. So when everyone else is, kind of losing their mind and trying to find funds, you can go into your banking system and be your own bailout. You can take advantage of those opportunities, just like you said.
Exactly.
Yeah, most people don't because they're sitting in the stock market. When the market goes down and other opportunities arise, they don't want to cash out and have a realized loss, or they're so emotionally beat up about losing the money, they're not thinking about deploying it.
They can't move past it.
Here's the really bad news for most people, okay? it was fine before 2020 to kind of sit on cash or sit in CDs or have your money in money markets, or even for that matter in your cash value. We're adding trillions of dollars into the money supply, trillions. That means within 5 years, it's going to cost at least twice as much to buy the same things we're buying today, right? It's just what inflation's going to do.
It's just true, yeah.
So I'm glad that I haven't locked my money up in an IRA till 59 and a half when I'm 41 right now. Because I can grab my cash out of my cash value and finance whatever I want when the opportunities are there, which we're going to have massive opportunities. I think there's 4 main opportunities right now. Number one is intellectual property. People are consuming more content right now than ever before because we're getting accustomed to living a virtual life. And so people are looking for that leadership in times of crisis. So those people who can bring leadership through intellectual property, I think there's a big opportunity. The second thing is private businesses. A lot of them are struggling and they're potentially going to fail. And those people with cash can bail them out and be profitable in doing that because they can now acquire infrastructure and employees. And there's a lot of people that are just later in life that are tired of the grind and didn't manage their cash flow. So there's going to be massive opportunity on the smaller businesses, 2 million, 1 million and under. The third thing is real property, so real estate. It's not the one that I'm going to do anything with because honestly, I just don't like dealing with real estate. You know, it's just I had over 100 properties at one time, which I considered like 100 mini migraines a lot of times. So
know the feeling.
I'm good with it. You know, it wasn't very passive when someone slipped and fell one winter. It wasn't passive when pipes burst or there was deferred maintenance or someone got in there that wasn't paying rent. They stole all the copper. I mean, dude, it was like, it was just it was a terrible narrative. Now, other people are really good at it, but I think the real property that's going to be valuable is there's going to be a lot of people that leave, bigger, more luxury-based homes for something that's more affordable in this new economy. And so I think that there will be a lot of single-family, multifamily type properties that will do pretty well, and you'll be able to pick them up because a lot of people are going to be overextended on that. I'd be really careful with commercial real estate. The fourth thing is taxes. We've seen so many changes since the big changes in 2017 to, with the Trump tax plan to now the IRS notices that have come out because of what's happening. And so there's a massive amount of capital people can get their hands on if they understand what net operating losses are. And then you can go all the way back till 2015 and run negative years against positive years and get refunds. And for those that, understand R&D credits or domestic production credits or Section 199A, like these are all things that if they're a foreign language, it means you're overpaying taxes. If it's something you understand, then you're probably keeping a lot more of that money going through, keeping it in your hands.
Good point. So, well, I think with all of that, like you said, just the opportunities that have presented itself, especially the intellectual property, which is why you are all on YouTube right now watching us, because of the intellectual property and people just searching for information and empowerment. And what we are always talking about on the Wealth Nation channel is life insurance, cash value whole life insurance to be specific. And there's so many naysayers out there, let's say Dave Ramsey, Susie Orsman, for example, that are not fans of the whole life insurance product. So what do you say to those people, Garrett, who are like, whole life is a terrible product? Why would you?
Dave Ramsey said,
buy term and invest the difference.
Yeah. I mean, one, like their kind of mental structure is reduction of expense.
Exactly.
So that's their entire viewpoint. How do you reduce expenses? So when they think of whole life being a higher premium than term, they're comparing apples to oranges, but they're saying this is a lower cost to be in term. So they're simply looking at cash flow and how can you minimize what's going out, right? The thing that both of them, and Dave Ramsey, to his credit, has changed his tune a little bit. Recently, I heard someone sent me a clip because for a long time, he's saying that you get 10% in the stock market. That's a pipe dream. Come on, that's a lie. That's blatant disregard for reality. Yeah. That's looking at the 1990s and pretending like that's never going to exist again. And so when people quote 10%, like first off, they're not taking into account volatility because volatility will disrupt those returns. I have some videos on
wipe it out.
Software. They're also not taking into account companies that go out of business. And those companies go out of business should be run at zero, but they just replace them with a new company, and then they give you whatever the return is for that. So that makes that average inaccurate.
Exactly.
And they're not accounting for fees. Sure, you can be in index funds, but the reality is index funds stay in growth when it's not time to be in growth. So you're taking an unnecessary longevity to your hit on your money. So I could just kind of keep going that the reality is we've seen in the last 20 years, the stock market's performed more like 6%, not like 10%. And here's the bigger news. 84% of the gains in the stock market come from 10% of the investors. So when they say that the stock market's average 6%, my question is for whom? Like who actually averaged that 6%? Because of something called derivatives and options. The reality is that not everybody that has their money in the market is getting the same return, because some people are selling short. They're doing a put option that says if the market goes down, we get the money. See, people confuse. They think the money disappears. No. It ends up in someone else's pocket. And so there were hedge funds that did 30% for a decade. Big hedge funds that Carl Icahn managed, or that George Soros managed. And these are not friendly, nice, I want to help humanity people. These are ruthless people that want to take as much money as they can in the most competitive of nature. And you're now putting your money up against them. And a lot of that so-called 6% went to them. And a lot of the average investors actually didn't make money. And so when Dave and Susie quote this to the person that says money's confusing to me, they go, let me keep it simple. Budget, set money aside, don't spend money. And I like all their advice for the majority of the population on that. And then they make this massive leap and they go, and just put your money in the stock market and get 10%. I'm like, where in the world is this happening? It's not happening, yet that's what they're saying. So I think Dave Ramsey's been the best at getting train wrecks on track. Absolutely the best. I think that Susie, overall, her advice is a train wreck that would be sold out to the FDIC or Starbucks. I've heard her change her tune, like not a fan at all. But Dave, I can at least go, oh, there's a lot of good there. The problem is if you follow his plan to a T, you're going to end up embracing scarcity and think it's all about reductionist thinking. And no one shrinks their way to wealth. The key is value creation and expansion. The key is velocity and cash flow, not accumulation. The key is mitigating risk, not taking risk. The key is knowing what's going on with your money and having that exit strategy rather than setting it into a plan till 59 and a half with no understanding if it's going to work or not, because 95% of Americans find out at age 65 they're not able to retire or be economically independent. That's a massive failure rate. That's a massive failure rate. And I think a lot of that failure rate comes down to the hype and the lies of the stock market. That's what people have thought. And look, so this is the bad news. You no longer get to be passive with your investing. You've got to actually take responsibility, because without responsibility, there is no freedom. And without responsibility, you continue to make other people rich. So let's think about it. When institutions say it takes money to make money, it doesn't take their money, it takes your money. When they say high risk equals high return, they take no risk and they get paid on the money that you're risking. Like, how is this not more prevalent for people to see through and understand that's what's going on? And this is why I get pissed off.
Yeah. Hype, man. You got me hyped over here again.
and it goes back to what you said earlier, making it simple.
Yeah.
Because when we give away control of our money, it gets complicated. They complicate it so that we give them control, because you know what? I can do better with your money than you can. So the more we have control of our money and what we're doing with our money and the risk that we're taking with our own money and research that we've done, the more money we'll make in the future, the more access to cash we'll have, the better our family will be in the future, because we get to teach them those same things to the next generation.
Yeah, and even going back to the Dave Ramsey point, we were totally, Dave Ramsey fans, true and true, doing the whole debt-free thing, and then we got to a point where we're like, wait a second. We have to put all of our money into a 401k or a good portion of it. And we're like, something doesn't sound right. So once we started expanding our mindset and moving from the scarcity to the abundance world, we realized, wow, okay, there's a little bit more to this money game than we knew about. So that's huge.
One thing I really like what you said on one of your videos was buying your net worth.
Whew.
Like when I saw that really it opened up another door in my brain, it felt like. So could you explain to us a little bit about buying your net worth?
Well, we have to recognize most people chase net worth through an accumulation philosophy. And that philosophy comes down to three kind of ideas. Number one, how much money can you put away? Number two, how much risk can you take? Number three, how long can you wait? So it's very much net worth based, where it's like, if you wait for 30 years, compound interest is going to kick in and save you. The problem is it doesn't, because of volatility, because of all the things we've already talked about. So it kind of has people shirk and abdicate responsibility, just handing their money over. Whereas net worth, what if I could buy it by buying a death benefit? Now, I get it. Death benefit sounds like, oh, I got to die to benefit. But the reality is, you have this death benefit there that can unlock other assets that would normally be stagnant. And so you're getting this amount of money that you've purchased today, saying it's going to come sometime in the future, which feels like net worth to me. And then instead you focus on cash flow. So buy your net worth, build your cash flow is the whole philosophy. And how I can use my death benefit to create more cash flow would be, number one, anyone that has a pension plan, if you have a death benefit, take your maximum pension. Don't take a minimum pension or a lower pension because you're afraid you might outlive your money, or that you might disinherit someone because you got a death benefit to back you up.
Yeah.
Or use that death benefit as a permission slip to spend your principal and interest, because right now, if someone saves up $1 million for retirement, oh, great, you're a millionaire on paper, but you're a pauper in life, because right now you'd be lucky to get $30,000 a year off of that. That's all taxable. So that's not all that exciting. So I'm just touching my eye like crazy during COVID, but I think I'm safe.
You'll be all right.
I'm going to be on a flight tomorrow trying not to touch my face all day. We'll see. So I can actually spend more of my assets, principal and interest, knowing I got a death benefit to back it up. I'm not disinheriting anyone. And if I outlive my money, I could always sell my death benefit in a senior settlement, in a life settlement, or is it intrafamily set? Like, there's so many ways that I could actually access that, including if I have an asset that's paid off, like I could do a reverse mortgage. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could, knowing the death benefit would replenish that after you die. So it actually unlocks other, assets that are doing nothing to provide you cash while you're alive, knowing that that's going to come back in after you die. Now, that's a pretty quick way to describe that concept. So let me say it more simply. GE in the 1950s wanted to recruit the best talent in the world. And they were struggling in a few areas where they weren't number one or number two. And they're like, we either need to get rid of these divisions, or we've got to become number one or number two. That was the mandate. They had like a certain period of time to do it. So what they decided is, nobody that's going to get us to number one and number two is unemployed. They're all employed. So how are we going to entice them to come work for us? And so they said, we'll offer a pension to these executives. So they go and say, come work for us. You'll get paid what you're getting paid right now. Plus, if you work for us for 7 to 10 years, you'll get paid for the rest of your life once you retire. And these people are like, that sounds great. So they started recruiting talent. But the moment that person worked there, they'd buy a cash value life insurance policy on that executive. Why? Because they could use the cash value to supplement the pension. And it wasn't predicated upon the stock market. And number two, that executive would eventually die. And if you think 1950s, they weren't living till 83. These are probably, doctor recommended them to smoke 1,000 packs a day because that's what was the marketing back then. Yeah. And they died pretty early, but the death benefit would then come in tax-free back to GE. So it would replenish everything that they paid in the pension, plus give them an interest rate without taxation. So that's what I mean by buying net worth, is you're buying the death benefit. People like Susie and Dave don't credit the death benefit as being worth anything. I don't know. It's strange to me that they don't, because let's go down the path of, let's say you're following Dave Ramsey and you're buying term and investing the difference. And you become really successful. Not like really, really successful, but just successful by societal terms. You've got, let's just say there's times where it only had to be $675,000 passed on to someone else before you got hit with the state tax. Now it's up to like $10 million. And it might go back down to $2 million. It's all over the place, depending on who's in the Senate and all this kind of stuff. So imagine you have enough success that later on you go meet with an attorney and you go, hey, I need to set up my estate. I don't want it to be taxed. And like, okay, well, great. The problem is you've got enough money that it's going to get taxed. So what we're going to do is buy some insurance. Now you're going to go buy insurance when you're in your 70s, right? So are they just planning that you're not going to be successful enough to need insurance to pay for taxes with the estate tax in the future? Is that the whole notion of buy term and invest the difference? Because otherwise it seems a little crazy to me that you're going to drop it at the time you're most likely to use it, when you're older, and then only 1.1% of them ever pay out. And here's what I'll give Dave and Susie credit for. When I look at how a lot of these companies design and sell whole life that aren't really whole life companies, the reality is they underperform. They take 4 or 5 years before you even start seeing cash. I get it. But have they never seen like 20 of the companies that design this where, you know, like I have a policy that's done 5.32% after expenses and it's available to me. I like that a lot better than my savings accounts, which I don't even worry about where I put them because it's not even worth the extra effort because it's so minuscule. And so, you know, buying net worth means you find assets that give you permission to spend more of what you have, and then you continually focus on cash flow all along. Because this is what really is confusing to me about retirement planning.
I love it.
We're going to set money aside from now until retirement, okay? Mm-hmm. And we're not going to focus on cash flow at all. It's just going to compound. It's just going to keep growing in the one account linearly. And then one day, when I finally go, I'm ready to retire, now I have to be a cash flow expert. Okay, so this to me would be like me telling you guys, hey guys, I'm going to run a marathon. All right, now in order to run this marathon, I'm going to start banking some time. I'm just going to start, and then like when it's time for the marathon, I will have relaxed so much and I'll have spent so much time not training that I'm going to go out and run it that day because I'm not going to be prepared. I'm going to get my butt kicked. And that's what people are doing is they're going to have the marathon of retirement with never practicing running for a single day of their life and find out, wait, cash flow and cash flow management is a lot harder than I thought, because when you're in retirement, if you're living off just your interest, which is supposedly the golden goose laying the eggs, right? Like, oh, just set enough money aside that you build up enough cash that you live off the interest. Well, here's the problem with that. Interest rates, how low are interest rates right now? I mean, the Fed rate's at zero. So it's zero. So retirees, bad news for you. Number two, we're putting trillions of dollars into the economy with no value attached to it. Trillions. And we have 23 trillion before this in debt. So may they increase taxes in the future? Maybe. Well,
possibly.
If they do, guess what? Your retirement income goes down when taxes go up. And then the third thing, and this is going to be the devastating thing for retirees, and I say it with a lot of compassion, inflation is a stealth tax that is going to decimate people.
Oh, man.
And it's been doing it for years.
Yeah.
And it's just going to get so much worse, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't like this notion of accumulating for 30 years to live off interest when taxes, inflation, and interest rates can actually be things I have very little control over, but completely impact how I live my life on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
And so, I don't know, how did retirement even become such a prevalent concept? I think it became a concept when people worked assembly lines. And you're like, yes. I want to retire from this. This sucks. Coal miners are like, I don't want the black lung. I want to out. But today where it somehow, I kind of feel like enough time has to pass where people go, wait, I hold this pen in my hand and I can write the script of my life. I don't have to just get a job because, you know, that's what everyone told me to do. Like, I can invent something. Mm-hmm. I can build a job that doesn't exist. I could create a skill set. But I think that we're trained, taught, and educated in school, stand in line, color within the lines, get good grades. And it just prepares people to work in a career they don't love for benefits they don't get to keep. And ultimately, that we're one COVID-19 situation away from people being in devastating situations. So
it almost sets people up for failure.
It's conforming. All we're taught to do is to conform.
Yep.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. So we know that you are on a mission to help 1 million people become financially independent. Yep. So leave us with a gem for those who are just starting on their journey of financial education and are looking for resources.
Exactly.
How do you speak to those people?
Well, the first thing you've got to do is the simplest. It's just pay yourself first. Set up a separate account, pay a percentage in that account. When you get a little bit of savings in there, start using overfunded cash value insurance to start boosting the return on that. To find more money for that, work on efficiency. Where can you get savings through taxes, interest, investments, and insurance, and then put that back into your pocket. Then become a cash flow investor. Get assets that create cash flow. Focus on cash flow, because if you don't, you're going to find yourself in a pretty difficult situation in the future. And you got to take responsibility for your life. Like right now, you're watching this video, so you're probably the type of person that's doing that. But there is no financial advisor that's going to come in on a white horse and save you. Like, you know, like there's no money person that's going to, you know, all of a sudden show up and do all the work for you. There is no magic product that you just buy and you're automatically wealthy. This takes a level of knowledge. But the good news is 80% of what you think you need to know about finance isn't information that matters. Mm-hmm. You figure out your investor DNA, where you're going to put money, you focus instead of diversify, and then you ignore the rest. You just got to build your foundation and some of the things I just talked about. And then with all that freed up time, invest back into yourself and your skill set so you can add more value in the world. Because the real way to wealth is through value creation and through serving others and solving problems, not through scrimping, saving, sacrificing, delaying, and deferring, and then eventually becoming a, you know, Dave and Susie miser. That, like, because I read a book that someone gave me of Dave Ramsey's a decade ago, and this person was looking to adopt a child, and then Dave said, well, if you can't pay cash for it, don't do it. And I'm like, that's pretty hard stuff as far as I'm concerned, you know. And then someone else said, yeah, my daughter's been following you her whole life, but now she won't spend any money. See, there's a problem where you can become too good at that philosophy. And so what you can't do is just go spend every dollar you make, but you also can't save every dollar you make. We've got to find a little bit of like enjoyment and that satiation along the way where you go, this is worth it. And I call that value-based spending. Yes. Value-based spending is you look at the price, can you pay cash for it? The cost is the overall net impact to your life. And then the value is your feeling of satisfaction and enjoyment. And if we can start thinking about value first and price third, life gets so much better.
Preach. Man, that is everything that we live by and stand by. So if you're just affirming everything that we already do, which is awesome.
It's nice for someone else to say it other than us.
Yeah, no, are you listening, Wealth Nation? It's not just us preaching this.